As World War II dragged deeper into chaos, somewhere beneath the heart of Germany, an underground project was moving forward. One that not even most Nazi officers knew about. Hidden beneath the dense Thuringian forest, a secret base known only as Zone 12 was conducting research that defied the limits of science itself. Their goal wasn't another tank or a faster aircraft. It was something far darker, a weapon that could destroy entire cities without using atomic energy. They called it the resonance device. Unlike bombs that relied on fire and radiation, this machine used vibration frequencies, powerful sound waves designed to shake the Earth itself. During its first test, the results were catastrophic. Witnesses described the ground trembling as if the planet itself was crying out. Thick concrete walls shattered, steel beams bent like paper. A surviving engineer wrote in his journal, "The Earth screamed, and we realized we had awakened something that should never exist." From that day, everything changed. The site was locked down. Dozens of scientists went missing, and every record connected to Project Schwarzwelle, the Black Wave, was wiped from existence. But before it vanished, British intelligence intercepted fragments of coded messages from Zone 12. One of them simply read, "Greater than, test successful. Less than, subject unstable. Area compromised." No further communication ever came after that. When Allied troops later reached the Thuringian region, they found what looked like an underground facility, completely sealed off. The air inside was thick with the smell of burned metal. And in the center of it all, a half-melted spherical object surrounded by twisted steel frames. To this day, no one knows what it really was. Some historians believe it was an early attempt at seismic weaponry, something capable of triggering earthquakes or collapsing enemy cities from miles away. Others claim it was a failed experiment, nothing more than Nazi pseudoscience. But one classified British report, declassified decades later, tells a different story. It mentions a device capable of releasing subatomic acoustic waves with destructive resonance potential. Words that sound eerily similar to modern-day sonic weapon research. Could it be that the resonance device was real? Or was it simply another myth buried with the Reich? Whatever the truth is, the destruction it left behind was undeniable. And as the war approached its final year, Allied intelligence became obsessed with one goal: find out who built it, and make sure it never falls into the wrong hands. Because if the Black Wave was ever activated again, humanity might not survive the sound of its own creation. When the Allied forces moved closer to the Thuringian region in early 1945, reconnaissance aircraft began to report strange anomalies. Compass readings went haywire over a particular patch of forest. Radio signals dropped without warning. Even radar scans showed a blank spot, as if the land itself was absorbing the waves. That blank spot was Zone 12. According to intercepted communications, a small team from the British Special Operations Executive, led by Captain Thomas Greaves, was sent to locate and document what remained of the site. The mission was classified as Echo Retrieval. No one outside London ever saw the full report. What little is known comes from fragments, heavily redacted pages that survived government censorship. Greaves's team entered the forest on April 3, 1945. They were equipped with Geiger counters, sound recording units, and basic excavation tools. But within 24 hours, they stopped transmitting. Their final message was brief: greater than, ground unstable, low-frequency pulses detected, equipment malfunctioning. Then, silence. When a second team arrived days later, all they found was a collapsed tunnel and shattered metal debris scattered across a crater nearly 60 feet wide. The entire underground complex had imploded, as if something had pulled the earth inward from below. Curiously, none of the nearby trees were burned. There was no sign of fire, explosion, or combat, only a deep hum that, according to witnesses, could still be faintly heard at night for weeks afterward, a sound described as a heartbeat beneath the ground. Years later, a surviving member of the intelligence division claimed that one of the objects recovered from the site was a small metallic sphere, roughly the size of a human skull, emitting weak electromagnetic pulses at irregular intervals. He added, "It was still warm, even after being buried for days." The artifact was quietly shipped to Bletchley Park under military escort, labeled Sample R12. What happened after that remains classified. No photographs, no lab reports, just silence. But one curious entry in the Bletchley archives hints at something chilling. It reads, "Greater than. Device appears to generate harmonic resonance not bound by conventional energy fields." In the final years of World War II, when defeat was closing in from all sides, German scientists began building something that terrified even their own leader. A weapon so strange, so unpredictable, that it was locked away under layers of secrecy, hidden not just from the world, but from the soldiers who were meant to use it. No photographs, no official record, and yet, its shadow appears in forgotten archives and classified reports. What was this weapon? And why did those who built it swear never to test it again? They called it a whisper at first. A series of documents, a handful of blueprints hidden in clerks' drawers. A few entries in a ledger where no ledger should have such words. The men who wrote those lines, engineers, officers, technicians, used coded phrases, half-truths, and euphemisms. They did not write, plainly, what they were building. They referred to it as the project, as the apparatus, and sometimes, in the biting humor of men who live with danger every day, as the thing. Even within casting circles of power, its real name never left an inner circle. That fact alone would, in later years, seed rumor, fear, and myth. This is not a story about generals or parades. It begins in workshops and factory halls, in fields where engineers sketched in mud, and in bunkers where technicians fought to keep machines from collapsing under their own ambition. It begins with a simple wartime truth. When war grinds and grinds again, ordinary minds grow desperate for extraordinary answers. Resources are strained. Supply chains are a skeleton of what they were. The men tasked with solving problems do what their craft has always demanded: improvise, iterate, and sometimes imagine. By 1943, the war had become an arms race, not only of numbers but of novelty. The obvious weapons, tanks, guns, planes, had been improved, mass-produced, perfected. The future, for those who could dream it, lay in the edges, in devices that did not follow past rules. It was in that space that the project took root. Neither clearly weapon nor wholly engine, a hybrid of engineering disciplines and a patient defiance of known physics. Its existence was whispered among a few research bureaus, then passed on to the secret manufactories carved into mountainsides and hidden valleys, where steel could be forged away from the lights of the world. The men who worked on it were an uneasy mix. There were university-trained specialists, metallurgists, fluid dynamicists, and radio technicians. And there were practical hands, mechanics, miners, and machinists who knew how to coax the stubbornest metal to life. Money flowed unevenly, in fits and starts, but enough to keep the project alive. Secrecy tightened around the construction like gauze. The workforce was compartmentalized. Teams built only fragments, never seeing the whole. Those who asked the wrong questions often found their path redirected. Our narrative begins in a single winter, brutal and gray, when snow sealed open roads and the smell of coal hung in every room. A tent of canvas and boards had been erected beside an industrial hall. Inside it, plans were spread over oil-stained benches. The sketches were peculiar: long tubular assemblies, heavy compressors, and an arrangement of chambers that suggested a weapon designed to interfere with nature rather than merely to pierce flesh or shatter metal. The diagrams hinted at harnessing force at a distance. Blasts of pressure, directed shock, a concentrated breath that could, if everything worked, unbalance aircraft, topple fortifications, or rend light structures without ever firing a projectile. People in charge used strict language in public. Tests were trials, operators were technicians, and failures were recorded as routine setbacks. Privately, letters revealed different concerns: the difficulty of stabilizing the power source, the unpredictability of the effects, and a bureaucratic hunger for something spectacular. In one surviving memorandum, a senior officer writes, tersely, that the project requires immediate results, public and decisive, in the coming months. That language, later read and reread with the benefit of hindsight, shows not just urgency, but a desperation that would push men to attempt the improbable. Tests began in remote fields at night. A handful of witness accounts from farmers, kept in local records and later located in municipal archives, describe seeing strange shapes silhouetted in the moonlight, men in overcoats moving in and out of tarpaulins, and a sound unlike artillery, a low, rolling shudder that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. Night after night, technicians adjusted valves, measured pressure differentials, and calculated trajectories. They logged readings unusual for the weapons of the day: atmospheric variables, resonance frequencies, and odd correlations between humidity and effect. Sometimes the machine produced nothing but a hiss. Sometimes it produced a wave of air so precisely focused that
the disappearance of sample R12 was officially declared an accident, a transport mishap blamed on fog, mechanical failure, and wartime confusion. But internal memos from the Ministry of Defense told a very different story. According to them, the convoy carrying the sphere never reached its destination, and what happened along the way has since become one of Britain's darkest unsolved military mysteries. On June 19, 1945, 3 military trucks left Bletchley Park at dawn, escorted by 8 armed personnel. The lead vehicle carried the sphere, sealed in a reinforced crate surrounded by lead and copper shielding. The route was simple: travel north through Oxfordshire, cross into Scotland, and deliver the object to an isolated research site near the coast of Caithness. But something went wrong almost immediately. At 10:47 a.m., radio logs record the last known message from the convoy. Visibility low, magnetic interference increasing, instruments unstable. Minutes later, total silence. No distress calls, no flares, no trace of wreckage ever found. When investigators arrived at the estimated site of disappearance 2 days later, they discovered tire marks leading into an open stretch of moorland, and then stopping abruptly, as if the vehicles had simply driven into thin air. The soil around the area was fused into a glass-like texture, black and smooth, and local compasses spun wildly when brought near it. No burn marks, no shrapnel, no remains, just emptiness. The military immediately sealed off the area under the code name Operation Eclipse, a term that, to this day, remains classified in British archives. Every man involved in the search signed lifelong non-disclosure agreements. Some reportedly left the service soon after, describing persistent humming noises in their ears and violent headaches that worsened near electronic equipment. A farmer living 6 miles from the site claimed that on the night of the disappearance, he saw a sphere of light hovering low over the ground, followed by a sudden, silent flash that turned the air thick and heavy. The statement was dismissed as hysteria, yet later, electromagnetic readings in that same region showed abnormal resonance peaks repeating every 12 seconds. The same frequency as the pulse from Zone 12. The same rhythm recorded inside Bletchley Park. By the 1950s, all official mention of the convoy was erased from British records. Operation Eclipse was folded into another classified program called Project Nemesis, believed to study unexplained wartime artifacts. But when researchers tried to follow the paper trail decades later, they found the Nemesis files missing, all of them. Not deleted, not destroyed, but physically removed from archives as if someone wanted them gone forever. And yet, small traces survived. Handwritten notes, coded references, and one chilling annotation in the margin of an intelligence memo. Subject R12 still active. Containment compromised. Active? After all these years? What does containment compromised mean? Did the device somehow reactivate itself? Or worse, escape containment on its own? Whatever the truth, the frequency associated with the object, that same repeating 12-second hum, has been recorded again. Not in Germany, not in Scotland, but in the North Atlantic Ocean, near coordinates that match the final transmission point of the missing convoy. If sample R12 truly survived, then it didn't just vanish. It moved. By the early 1950s, the world had changed. The war was over, the atomic age had begun, and global powers were turning their eyes toward the sea, the new frontier of surveillance and deterrence. But deep beneath the surface of the North Atlantic, something old was still awake. The first report came from a British naval sonar operator aboard HMS Resolute in 1952. While monitoring submarine activity near the Arctic Circle, his equipment began picking up rhythmic signals, deep, low-frequency pulses that echoed across hundreds of miles. The pattern repeated every 12 seconds. At first, they thought it was a malfunction, but soon, other ships began detecting the same thing: U.S. destroyers, French subs, even Norwegian research vessels. The readings all matched perfectly: same frequency, same interval, same location. The pulse was coming from the depths, roughly 3,000 meters below the North Atlantic surface, near a remote trench northwest of Scotland. Scientists called it an anomalous seismic resonance. But a few in the intelligence community knew better. They'd seen that signature before, at Zone 12, and later in the lost records of Operation Eclipse. Within months, a joint Anglo-American task force was formed under the codename Project Abyss. Their mission? Locate the source of the signal and confirm whether it had any connection to the missing convoy. In June 1953, the research vessel Horizon Star departed from Portsmouth, carrying a team of naval scientists and deep-sea engineers. They lowered a series of experimental hydrophones, advanced underwater microphones, into the trench. For the first several days, nothing unusual happened. Then, on the seventh night, the pulse returned. Louder. Closer. Crew members reported feeling a faint vibration through the ship's hull, synchronized with each 12-second interval. Tools rattled. The water itself seemed to tremble. Then, at 2:14 a.m., one of the sonar screens displayed something that froze the entire control room. A spherical metallic echo reflecting sound waves in ways no natural object ever could. A sphere, roughly 2 meters in diameter, resting at the ocean floor. Before the team could react, all communication systems failed. Compass needles spun uncontrollably. Electrical circuits burned out one by one. And then came the noise. A deep, resonating tone unlike anything ever recorded. Part machine, part thunder, part heartbeat. It built in intensity until the captain ordered an emergency retreat. As they pulled away, the water behind them shimmered faintly, as though the sea itself was bending under invisible pressure. When Horizon Star finally made it back to port, every crew member was ordered to sign the Official Secrets Act. The report they filed was immediately sealed under Strategic Defense Intelligence. The public explanation? A seismic event, nothing more. But in private, one of the scientists, Dr. Stephen Rowe, wrote in his personal journal, "It was waiting, and when it heard us, it answered." 2 years later, Dr. Rowe vanished during another research mission in the same region. His body was never recovered. Since then, the 12-second pulse has never completely disappeared. Sometimes it fades for months, even years, only to return stronger, shifting slightly in frequency as if moving across the ocean floor. Modern oceanographic databases list it simply as Acoustic Anomaly 12, but within classified archives, it still bears its original name. Sample R12, status, active.